Good morning and welcome to TalkSports. It is our weekend program, our Saturday sports special, where we speak with the movers and the shakers in sports, the sportsmen, sportswomen, sports administrators, coaches, just about everyone involved in sports. Well, on this weekend's program, we'll be speaking with Mr. Keith Joseph, who is the president of the Caribbean Association of National Olympic Committees, or CANOC, and we'll be speaking about the Caribbean's exploits at the just concluded Paris Olympic Games, even though we do have the Paralympics in progress. And we'll also look at some of the other activities taking place within the CANOC region. And then we'll also look into his candidacy for president of PANAM Sports. PANAM Sports is basically the Pan American Sports Organization. It's now rebranded as PANAM Sports, and also some other Caribbean sports administrators who are seeking executive offices in PANAM Sports. We know of Vida Bruno Victor of Grenada, who's an executive member, but seeking re-election on the PANAM Sports executive board. Okay, so I'll be talking about that as well. My co-host Rudian Sylvan is joining me from Toronto, and say good morning to you, Rudian. It is what we call a pre-Labor Day weekend. It's a Labor Day weekend, as we call it, in New York. Good morning to you.
Pleasant good morning to you. And as we say, the things start in New York, so it's no more start already. Yeah, surely it's a pleasure to be here with you, and another week talking sports, and you get right at it.
Yeah. Well, before Keith comes on, you should have him on shortly. Just some highlights of a very sort of mixed fortunes. We see that Kirani is still being competitive.
Yeah,
that's good. Anderson
also
winning, and what is interesting is that both Anderson and Kirani will compete in the finals of the Diamond League.
Yeah,
because when they go into Brussels on September 13-14, what will actually be happening there is that everyone will be going in on a clean slate, basically. So you qualify, but the points they don't carry you in. Well, they carry you in the final, but that's about it.
That's about it.
Yeah. So the important thing is getting into there, Brussels, and then
definitely, and then winning. Because once you win, you get a diamond.
You get the diamond. Once you win, you get the diamond. There's no accumulation of points previously and blah, blah,
previously, blah. And certainly.
Yeah. So the top 8 actually will qualify in the various events, and I know Kirani is within that top 8.
Top 8, right? Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
He's basically qualified, and that was the final 400 meters for qualification. As for the javelin, there's one more javelin event, I think, in Zurich, and then they go into Brussels, which is next on the 5th of September.
Yes,
the javelin.
Friday.
So there's still Anderson, already qualified, I can see, right? Even though he doesn't pick up points, he's still within that, top 8, right, to go into. So we have both of these athletes who will be competing for the diamond, and which will also be a very good way of ending
the season. Yeah,
yes.
So for a long season, very long season. And it's going to be as long as next year also going to be as long, because Tokyo is around this time, or September will be Tokyo next year. So certainly is a very long time as well. Right. Yeah, so it's quite interesting to see some things happening in the U20. There's some phenomenal events, and you can tell you see the African nations is stepping up. The African countries have surely start putting themselves on the top of the podium in various events, and see that the investment, as we always talk about, that these countries are putting in now into the athletes is paying off. And
Right.
it certainly is something that we'll talk about.
All right, so Mr. Joseph is around. He will be joining us very shortly. I'm seeing him moving about. He's getting himself organized. Blah blah blah. Look in his bright yellow St. Vincent and the Grenadines colors. But every time, and that, Rudian, every time Mr. Joseph comes on our program, we have the juggle, whether St. Vincent, Grenada, Trinidad and Tobago, but then he just throw in and say, no, he just throws in and just say Caribbean man,
Caribbean, he's all done. He's all done. He's all done. Everything.
Yeah, he's a Caribbean man. Well, that's the easiest way to get out of the old talk, because everybody will grab a
They
little
want to
piece.
grab him. Everybody want to grab a piece. Yeah.
All right. So as I indicated, Mr. Joseph will be speaking to us about the Caribbean's exploits in the Paris. He'll be talking about a little more on CANOC and some of the activities. They have their gala. We spoke a little about it when he last joined us, I think it was in June. And then we also want to talk about his candidacy for the presidency of PANAM Sports, but also the other Caribbean sports administrators, who are also throwing their hat in the ring in terms of executive positions. But he has that, he is, I believe, the only one from the English-speaking Caribbean that has really shown an interest and expressed an interest in that. So let's say good morning to Mr. Joseph. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you today?
Yes, we're fine. And just for clarity, are you in St. Vincent at this time?
Yes, I am. I haven't gone anywhere.
Okay, so
I don't know where
he hasn't gone anywhere. All right. Okay. So, Mr. Joseph, thanks for joining us. And as usual, we want to start off by looking first at the Paris Olympic Games, and specifically on the CANOC region, and the exploits of their athletes, and in general, their sportsmen and sportswomen at the Paris Olympic Games.
Let me just say that I think that it has been a bit of a up and down ride. I think we should be proud because the achievements of St. Lucia, Alfred, and of course Lafont from Dominica augurs well for the small countries or the micro countries within the international arena. The very impressive performances by the two athletes. Of course, Kirani and Anderson from Grenada continue to ensure that the Spice Isle is well represented. Not Kirani so much as our Victor
Lyndon Victor, yeah,
in the multi event. Karani, I think we know Karani's issues, and he was lightly raced this year. He ran well within himself, etc. But the big quote unquote powers of the region were a big disappointment for the peoples of the Caribbean. Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Bahamas, who are usually expected to carry the torch, did not do as well as we would have expected. There are, of course, explanations for this, but while we understand the explanations that are being given, it still remains a bit of a disappointment, and you see that in the media, particularly in Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica, where there's a lot of back and forth between officials, coaches, and some of the athletes in some instances. But certainly, I think we look at the positives that have come out of it. Jamaica is showing that it is growing in the field events and the throwing events, and the Dominica, St. Lucia, They look like they will. Those two athletes, Lafont and Alfred, look like they'd be around for a while. And it's not that we didn't see it coming. Alfred, we know from Carifta. Lafont, we know from the Commonwealth Games before and at the CAC Games last year. And so we expected what we saw from Alfred in NCAA in her final season, then moving into the World Indoors. We expected that kind of performance from them. And I think that the other small islands of the Caribbean can take heart, because when you compare the results for countries just around 100,000, 150,000 people, and they rank on the medal table versus countries that have millions of people, we have to be proud of the achievements of our Caribbean athletes.
Mm-hmm. And not forgetting Melody of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, who almost got onto the podium. I mean, a fourth place.
It's our first finalist at the Olympics, and we're very proud of her. We thought we got close enough. We thought we'd have been a bit closer, but that didn't happen. But I think that she too is going to be around for a little while. That's our Shafiqa Maloney.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and definitely, as you indicated, the powerhouse, of, and you're speaking most of Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, even the Bahamas, bit disappointed with so many injuries and withdrawals and things like that. So, what you hoping could happen between, or will there be a transition, you will say, between now and probably Los Angeles, in terms of a changing of some of the guards, or old guards, as you will say? Because certainly there will be some teams like, Fraser Price, for example, and and others who to some extent may have seen their last Olympic Games.
Well, the thing is, you wonder whether this one should have been the last one, or the last one should have been the final salvo. The thing is that, athletes have been staying on a lot longer. You remember how long Carl Lewis continued running, Kim Collins and others. Over the years, we've seen athletes stay around a lot longer than we used to happen in the past. I mean, in the old days, you made one Olympics and that was satisfactory. You were hard pressed to be able to hold forth for another Olympics. Some like Bolt and others have been able to go on for quite a while because they started much younger. And there is a tendency for us to see young people coming forward. You see the Clayton twins, for example, threatening to hold their own in the not too distant future. So that is going to be happening all around. I mean, you look at Tebogo from Botswana, and you saw him in World Juniors some years ago, and you've seen what he has turned into. So there is a sense in which the opportunities for athletes to get back into the game, or to get into the elite group at an earlier stage, is something that is going to actually force some of the others into early retirement if they continue at the pace at which they're going. There are more opportunities now for getting into the elite ranks. The emphasis on rankings by World Athletics for getting into major championships, those things will influence how things how we look going into the future. But the Caribbean athletes, many of them are not actually based at home, and therefore the ongoing development, management, etc., is not necessarily under the control of the local association. And so local associations find themselves actually responding to what the coaches and agents and others of our athletes tend to be telling us. And more than at the local level, the decision-making process as to how long they stay in the sport is really controlled outside of our respective countries.
Mm-hmm. Another thing I want to ask you about, Mr. Joseph, the importance of these championships, pre-games camps. I know CANOC is, involved in supporting some of our NOCs? How important you see that in terms of preparation, whether it's Commonwealth Games, Olympic Games, etc.?
The camps are always very important, and the gentleman sitting next to you can tell you a lot about that. The fact is that it builds familiarity. You get into a comfort zone. But most importantly, it gets you acclimatized. People who left the Caribbean to go to Lima had to be out running to buy warm clothing, not because they weren't told that it is actually winter time down there when we have summer in the north, but because they were reading temperatures online and they suggested that it was about 20, 21, 23, and that kind of thing, only to find out so those who had the experience of being anywhere around Lima, and I'm talking administrators now, would have advised their athletes to take warm clothing. It is South America's winter. And so, those who weren't adequately prepared for that found themselves not being able to get acclimatized. Camps allow you to get acclimatized. Camps put you in a mindset, a frame of mind that allows you to be prepared more deliberately for the competition that is upcoming. The fact of the matter is that why these camps are important for the smaller countries is because many of us can't afford to have athletes go on separate camps as some of the larger countries are able to do. And therefore, the PANAM Sports financial contribution and the NOC's own contribution to realizing the camps remain an important issue going forward. What we may have to do in future, is to ensure that the smaller islands have an internal discussion among themselves as to how we can collaborate a bit more to make sure that the camp meets our needs, right? There's a little bit of selfishness, self-interest, etc., as it now stands in terms of taking on that kind of project. But it is important because the smaller countries have to understand that even if we have one athlete, and that athlete is likely to win a gold medal, it doesn't in any way prevent us from collaborating with other small ones, particularly in the Eastern Caribbean, in order to ensure that all of us together benefit from what is possible by going to camps. And I think that is something I would recommend that we do more deliberately going forward.
Mm-hmm. I have another one to ask you about. Rudian, you have anything to throw at Mr. Joseph before I chime in again?
No, certainly, Mr. Joseph. Talk about the camps and why you think is the reason that a lot of these islands and stuff, is it an ego thing? A lot of these athletes are coaching in other countries where they do have their own camp. They do have their own program. So is that the reason why you don't see much of the camp or the necessary needs for some of this camp? Because I mean, a coach will want to go with an athlete, and a coach may have 3, 4, 5 athletes from different countries. So it become a challenge. How the collaboration can happen there.
The thing is that we have to take more responsibility for our athletes, and that involves greater communication with them, sharing information, and they sharing information with us as to what makes them most comfortable, right? When it comes to we are an individual sport, so every individual wants to get the best result for him or herself, him or her athlete. And what you're trying to do is to put a team of technical personnel that could assist the athlete as much as is possible. But there are occasions where that same group of personnel can in fact facilitate the well-being of a group of athletes from smaller islands whose individual countries may not be able to provide them with all that they need. So an individual in one island, for example, may need the physiotherapist, they need the sports psychologist, they need the nutritionist. They cannot get all of those officials, given the quota sizes, etc., from their own NOC, because it goes beyond the capacity as far as the regulations are concerned. So is it possible for us to get together and say, look, since we can all benefit from some of those technical officials, that we pool our resources and say, even if they have to stay outside of the village, and we facilitate their accommodation and whatever else, that we do so because we can all benefit from it, right? We know that the athletes are hypersensitive at that time. They're very focused and so on. But we have to make sure that we facilitate their comfort as much as is possible.
Certainly. May I ask a quick question concerning the World U20 that's happening right now? Why I mean, I know countries have to bid for it, but you see that it is in a summer sport that is in right now is in a winter country. Why is that so? Because there's less benefit for the athletes, and at least 80% of the countries that's there they are in summer preparation right now, and is not in winter. So why is it games like this is in a colder country at this time of the year?
Well, that's the problem with bidding. When Australia hosts the Olympics, right?
Yeah.
It seeks to put it at a time that suits its own country, right? Because you're hosting, you're footing the bill, and you want to make sure that the hosting is worth your while. Okay, there are a number of things that you consider when you're hosting. But when you go from our area to Australia, we talk about how difficult it is to adjust, etc., etc. Yet when we in the north have major championships, the Australians have the same problem when they come our way. So we're in a world where they're northern and southern hemisphere, right? And time zones and changes the climate. So you, as the organizer of the event, like the International Olympic Committee or World Athletics, they're looking for bids, and countries want to have the opportunities to host, but they can't always, if you like, cut your nose to spoil your face, because their people are putting out the money to facilitate your coming to their country. If they don't have it at the time when their athletes are well prepared, then when the games are finished, the people will ask, well, why you took our money to host an event, etc. Right? So there's a chicken and egg situation, and we have to work it out. The time zones for events in Paris, for example, were worked out because US television paid the big bucks. NBC bought the television rights, and so they wanted to ensure that they get optimum coverage, particularly the United States, which is their biggest market, right? So the influences, not just on where the events go, but also on the time scheduling of events. It dictated not necessarily by the owners of the games, but by those who bid and host the games. Because what is their reason for hosting it, right? And you may remember that in respect of the US bid for 2024, it was Boston that the US OPC had selected. But then the people of Boston say, who is paying for this party? Us? Well, you didn't involve us. And consequently, we have no interest in hosting the games. And then they had to go and they get LA, right? So, it's that kind of situation. And the dynamics of the internal politics of the IOC led the IOC to say, hey, LA is too good a thing. And so if we're giving Paris 24, let's give 28 one time, forgetting and ignoring the fact that historically, you're allowed to bid 6 years before. So those who may have had an intention of bidding for 2028 have automatically had been abandoned because the IOC already gave out 28 at the same time that they gave out 20. So it's always
There's one other thing I want to ask you about as it relates to the Olympics, this time Paralympics. I mean, in the Caribbean, for example, and probably I know there some time ago there was some discussions and collaboration between the Paralympics in the Caribbean with CANOC, etc. But why is there seemingly a disconnect in terms of the sort of attention that our Paralympians get, post the Olympics? So the able bodies completed their sojourn in Paris, and the Paralympians are in Paris competing, but we don't hear much about it. I mean, why there's seemingly a sort of disconnect, Mr. Joseph?
It is turf and organizations. The Paralympics don't have anything to do with the Olympics. The International Paralympic Committee is responsible for the Paralympics, not the International Olympic Committee. And they parted ways several years ago. Okay, they may assist, but if you notice, it's a totally different arrangement. You don't hear Thomas Bach being the spokesperson at this event. And it's the same thing even by the Pan American Games. I'm on the Pan American sports executive. We have nothing to do with the Para Panam. Okay? It is a totally different organization. And they guard jealously their separation. In the Caribbean, there was once a Caribbean Paralympic Committee that is still somewhere up in the air. But countries that have attempted to form national Paralympic committees have sought to distinguish themselves from the National Olympic Committee, right? But because the IPC and the NPCs don't have the kind of resources that the IOC and NOCs have, they often ask for assistance at the national level as much as is possible. But they don't want you interfering with their decision-making processes. So in some countries, Barbados, for example, the National Paralympic Committee eventually agreed to be subsumed under the aegis of the National Olympic Committee of the BOA. And so they have a relationship where when they're doing their things, they report to the BOA, and the BOA knows what is happening and therefore participates. In many of our other countries, national Paralympic committees don't want to have anything to do with the NOC, except perhaps when they're traveling and they say, could you give us some assistance or could you give us some uniforms, etc., etc. There's no necessary relationship between the two organizations that allow the one with all of the resources to be able to influence the decision-making processes within the other, which is the IPC. Yeah? So it's two totally different sets of things. And that's why you see the arrangements in terms of television coverage and so on. The reason that many of us get confused is because they're always promoted together. So you hear the country that the city that is hosting the Olympics is also hosting the Paralympics, right? The country that is hosting the Pan Am Games is also hosting the Para Pan Am. So the two are seen as a twinned twinned organization, but they're not. They're very, very disparate organizations. Okay. Now the difference is that the Commonwealth Games Federation, prompted by Canada and some other other countries, always sought to engage the Paralympians into the thing. So it is a collective games that allows for para athletes to be integrated into the games from the very beginning. There's no separation between them. So when you're having the Commonwealth Games, there are X number of para sports that are on the program. And so they are part and parcel of, that's why they call it the friendly games. Everybody is there in one place. It is one major activity. And that approach was taken by the Commonwealth Games because they felt that if you separate them, you tend to give way to the feeling that there's something less about them as individuals. And why can't they be integrated into the games overall? And so they have had a better way of collaborating so that it's one games and it involves para athletes as well as regular athletes.
I think well articulated. And when last you were on our program, we spoke a bit, but shortly after there was a release that came out from CANOC, which spoke about the sort of engagement and discussions taking place The ICC, Cricket West Indies, and CANOC have been engaged in discussions with PANAM Sports and Central Caribbean Sports regarding the inclusion of cricket on their respective sports programs to allow for the sport to be part of the CAC Games and PANAM Games of 2026 and 2027, respectively. It seems as if a lot has taken place, I should say, since then regarding cricket, particularly being part of the program for LA 28. And we know how dear it is for cricket for the West Indies. I want us to just spend a little time, a few minutes, and giving us some clarity on how the sort of engagement that's taking place, the discussions, and what we can expect probably within the next year or two regarding cricket, even at the level of CAC, PANAM, etc., etc.
Yeah, well, the thing is that, like I said, what happens is that the IOC tends to set the pace in the sense that over the last few editions of the Olympic Games, they have allowed the host countries to identify a number of sports that the host country believes will be sufficiently popular that they want on their program, that be part of their culture, for example. So whereas the IOC had dropped baseball, softball from the Olympic program, Japan says, hey, we are a baseball playing nation. And so they put that as one of their priorities. They also put rock climbing and some other things, right? Paris, as you know, put dance among their programs. LA says they're putting flag football because it's part of their culture. Of course, baseball, softball is going to be on. They have brought in squash and cricket as other sports. So it means, therefore, that CAC Games and PANAM Games, as prelude to LA 28, find themselves with a mandate to include on their sports program the sports that are on the program of the next Olympic Games. So they have a mandate, really, by their own constitutions to include cricket, squash, flag football, and what have you. But of course, some may not be possible because the sport may not be popular in the area, right? So it depends on whether or not they have the capacity to do it. But they have a mandate, really, to do it by their own constitution, not the IOC forcing them to do so. So in their bid for 2027, because it was a delayed bid after the loss of Barranquilla, Lima 2027 says they will include cricket on their program. And so the ICC is discussing how that is going to happen, because Lima is prepared to do it. Dominican Republic is host of CAC Games 2026. Dominican Republic is saying they may have a challenge in terms of getting the facilities in place, in time, etc. But the CAC, whose president is in the Dominican Republic, from the Dominican Republic, would like to see cricket involved there. The alternative is to have it on the program and have it in some other country, which we've done in the past. So it's quite possible that you could still have cricket on the CAC program for 2026, but it may not necessarily be held in the Dominican Republic, right? But there's a commitment on the part of Central Caribbean Sport to have it in 2026. LA is in constant discussions with the IOC because they have later this year to say exactly what are the sports and where they're going to be played within the confines of LA or within the US, for that matter. So they are trying to work that out at present. And there have been a lot of meetings of the ICC and arms of the ICC over the last couple of weeks, some of which are still taking place. The role of Cricket West Indies in the scheme of things, because as you know, for the recently concluded World Cup, the USA program was actually put under the Cricket West Indies. So it had oversight. Will that happen? We're not quite sure, but we are certainly at the level of CANOC in discussions with Central Caribbean Sport, PANAM Sports, the host countries of 26 and 27, and the Cricket West Indies slash ICC to try to be partner to getting cricket, because we are from the West Indies, getting cricket played in a larger number of countries as America's netball is trying to do with netball.
The question now, and I'm sure Rudy and you're ready to ask you, but I'll go first. While it may be a challenge in terms of LA 28, in terms of participation, let's say cricket is on, and in terms of participation, it may be easier for CAC and PANAM for the individual territories to participate. Why? I hope I'm correct in terms of that. Easier for the individual territories, whether it's Grenada, St. Vincent, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, etc., participate at the CAC cricket, PANAM cricket. The big challenge will be at the Olympic Games. How will that take place? What are you hearing? What do you think will happen there, Mr. Joseph?
Well, I know what must happen. What must happen is that they can go as individual. They have to go as individual countries under their respective national Olympic committees. That is the only way you can get into the games, right? Individual country teams. And so they just as the Commonwealth Games in having cricket said to Cricket West Indies, you have to determine, said to the ICC, you have to determine what format you want the game in. And secondly, how you are going to provide us with the qualifiers. How many teams do you want to the finals? And how are you going to provide those teams, right? So they may decide that within the Caribbean, that the Caribbean can have its own qualifying tournament and get a slot for one or two teams, or that they have a different structure that allows them to get Caribbean teams involved in different areas to meet qualifying standards. But they have to, ICC has to prepare, and that's what they're doing now, a structure for the competition, a justification for the number of teams they want present in LA, and the mechanism by which they are going to be able to determine that there is adequate representation and that the best teams get to LA.
Okay. Before we get on to a substantive discussion, and I hope you will bear with me giving me a couple extra minutes past our program, but let's talk about the awards ceremony for October 19th in Turks and Caicos. Based on the press releases and promos going, it seems to be turning out it will be an historic event and a milestone for CANOC. Let's talk a bit about this award ceremony, Mr. Joseph.
Look, if we are a regional sporting organization, we ought to be able to recognize those who contribute from within the area. Outstanding performances at all levels, the level of athletes, officials, administrators, supporters, journalists, etc. Because, you know, we while many people get paid, a lot do not. But whether you get paid or not, we have to find a way within this region to always be able to acknowledge those among us who have done well, because they become exemplars for others. And we're talking continuity, whether it is in the actual field of competition or in the administration or even in coaching. So the idea is that we cannot feel that it has come of age. Over the years, they have had one or two individuals recognized, but we thought we had come to a stage where on an annual basis, we should be able to have our own award ceremony. We meet annually. We have an annual workshop the day before, and we always have an assembly, and all our members attend. And so we thought that the time had come for us to do this. We're doing it in Turks and Caicos. Turks and Caicos has promised that it will be done in grand style at the Sandals Beaches Resort. And it is going to be a very high-profile event. So we want to recognize the Caribbean sports personalities, male and female. We want to recognize the team that has done well for the at a regional level. Young persons coming through, what we call breakthrough athletes. They burst on the scene and they're going to be the next generation, but they weren't expected necessarily to have done it so quickly, but they did, to recognize them. The Olympic Committee of the Year, in terms of overall performance, what have they done really? We're not leaving out the media, because we believe that without the media, sport cannot survive, right? You need to get the stories out, and the media does that for us. Similarly, the sponsors, any individual, institution, or whatsoever that may have provided service that we consider distinguished, and older individuals, usually, who would have given a life of service to sport in the region. We also want to recognize that type of individual. We have a committee that is headed by Fortuna Belrose of St. Lucia. And she has a team of individuals around her from across the region, who have been invited to assist in on this awards committee. They gave a report yesterday, which we thought was quite impressive. But we are hoping that we can take ownership of rewarding our own, of acknowledging those who have done well, and those who are most deserving of region-wide recognition.
Yeah, well, I like the part that you said that it will be a week in which we jointly, as you said, celebrate sport as a vehicle for excellence, regional and international solidarity, Caribbean unity, and our humanity. I think well said in terms of that. And certainly, I think there's also the sustainability awards between CANOC and the IOC as well, because we know that's something important for the Caribbean region.
Yeah, and when we talk of sustainability, in the recent meeting we were talking about, we don't pay enough attention to it. You have to wait till you go in a tourism magazine to see the protective measures for our coral reefs that Grenada has put in terms of the architecture that is on the water with the circle of figures holding hands.
Yeah.
Those things are important for us and the survival of our planet. And I think that we need to acknowledge when institutions come along and individuals, and that we can blend our culture with our survival, so that it's an artistic piece, yet it is playing a major function in terms of the sustainability of corals within our waters.
All right. Let's get into some important stuff now, but I'll just give a little intro and then give you the opportunity to give a sort of historical relevance to that. With we know that the PANAM Sports election soon come in, and it said yes too that for the second time, you as president of CANOC now, but as Mr. Keith Joseph will contest, well, I should say the president of CANOC will contest the presidency of PANAM Sports. I'm not sure if this is the second time you contested the presidency, but I know you're already an executive member, vice president, But certainly there's historical value to that in particular, because we have a number of Caribbean administrators who are executive members who sit on the executive of the of PANAM Sports. But tell me, Mr. Joseph, why the interest in the presidency of PANAM Sports?
Next year, 2 years from now, 2026, Central American and Caribbean Games will celebrate its 100th anniversary. It's the oldest multi-sport games after the Olympics. And the institution that leads that is made up of members from the Central American and Caribbean region. In that institution, now 98 years old, we've never had an English-speaking person as its president, except for the brief 2.5 year period between the death of Hector Cardona of Puerto Rico and the election of Luis Mejias from Dominican Republic. Steve Stout was interim president. He ran for president at the end of that brief interim period, and he lost. Individual membership in terms of organizations show that the Caribbean has more, the English-speaking Caribbean has more members than the Spanish-speaking. But the Constitution is configured in a way that countries that host the games have 2 votes and everybody else has 1. So on the basis of that, unless you get the Spanish to support you as an English-speaking Caribbean person, you will never have an English-speaking president. Are we making up numbers? Are we genuine members who are eligible to serve? The same situation happens with PANAM Sports. It was established in the 1970s. We had a person who was 35 years the president of the organization, right? And again, numerical-wise, the English-speaking Caribbean has a larger membership of the 41 countries. But the same constitutional rules are applied. So we could never win if we're basing it solely on English-speaking Caribbean vote. For those of us who know and operate within the sports space of the Americas, understand how difficult it was to have attained the presidency of CONCACAF, right? We don't want to go through what happened with that, but the fact of the matter is that we have to find a way of acknowledging that we are a region that have people with capacity. We have Nobel laureates, we have people. Yesterday we heard of the death of Sir Sridhar Ramphal, and now everybody's extolling the virtue as a champion, as a global public servant, right? What is it that prevents us from recognizing that in sport, as in any other field of endeavor, the Caribbean possesses people with the same capacity and aptitude? Is it that we have a belief that it's only a certain type of people can lead these organizations? Is it that belief that you have to have money to run the organization? The money in the organization is not any individual's own, it belongs to the collective. What is it that prevents us from believing that somebody from the Caribbean could aspire to one day lead these organizations, even the IOC, for example? What prevents us? If at each of these games, athletics is the creme de la creme, and that when you look at the totals, the English-speaking Caribbean virtually control the top positions in athletics, then what is it that prevents us from getting that? And that's all I'm saying. I'm saying that I believe I've been around long enough. I believe I have the experience. I believe I have the expertise. And I believe that we can have around me a Caribbean cadre that is capable of bringing a new vision, a healthy approach to the regional sports. We lament the fact that our governments have not expended the resources for us to host, for example, the Central American and Caribbean Games since the last time in the 60s when Jamaica hosted it. The Commonwealth Games, Jamaica hosted it in 1966, right? Outside of that, we have not put ourselves in a position to convince the region that we can do it as a collective. We can create an approach that says that we can host PANAM Games if we use a combination of 4 countries. They would have thought that about football and the Football World Cup until some countries in Asia said, we could do it together. Asia, Korea, and Japan. Okay? Why can't we think of that? Why can't we think that it must always be in one of these other countries and that we are simply passengers on a boat with no real input other than the fact that we add value to the end result by carrying our athletes. What is it about us that has us believing that we are so limited, that we will always have to be in organizations with our hands outstretched and on our knees? The time has come for us to recognize that independence should have meant much more than it is. CARICOM is well short of what it ought to be doing in terms of building solidarity and unity among us as a region. When we try to do things, we pull ourselves back. T.A. Mary Show started in Grenada, started West Indies Federation. And some countries said, no, if you do that, then, them little islands going to come and take whatever little we have. The news came out recently where in Jamaica, they're now saying we need to curtail the number of students we bring into our schools to participate in secondary sports, because those students are now developing into major athletes who are winning medals, and therefore they will take away our leadership in the sport. That is what is happening now as we speak. Why is that? In a Caribbean that we're still behaving like crabs in a barrel, and we believe that somebody else is always better to lead us than one of our own, because we can't see ourselves as capable of doing things ourselves. Look at what you've done with your program. Look at your own pathway, right? 10, 15 years ago, you can tell people of the struggles you have had to even get to this point, and that you still have, and where does the support come from? How much support do you get from us as a Caribbean? So I think that we what we're trying to do is, whether I win or lose at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter if in doing so I have brought a level of consciousness to our peoples in the Caribbean that we are better than this, that we are as capable as anybody else, and that we can do as good a job as anybody else in leading an international organization. That's what this is about, really, empowering Caribbean people and giving examples for Caribbean youths of today to aspire to become leaders of tomorrow, not just in their respective Caribbean countries, but at a global level.
But you do admit, Mr. Joseph, that even with the support of your English-speaking Caribbean colleagues, that you still have to, the challenges that still have to rely on the support of your Spanish, those in the Spanish-speaking territories as well.
Yeah, and therefore it is important that as a collective we approach them and make the same point. That are we in an organization where they only see things in one way? Because if that is the vision, then it's not a region we're not an Americas, really. We are disparate groups just coming together for games. We're not really helping each other. If we are in an organization where they cannot see beyond their own ethnic group or see beyond their own skin color, then what are we in it for? Because at the end of the day, we keep talking about a sport family, and we tell our youth and our children of the potential for sport, as Mandela says, to change lives and to change the world. Then we are fooling them. We are fooling them if we can't put that into practice. We are deluding ourselves and deluding successive generations, and suggesting instead that we will always be a divided world, north versus south, rich versus poor, white versus black. Is that what we want for the future generations? Is that our legacy? So if we can cross the floor and convince our Spanish colleagues that there is an opportunity, that we should allow the opportunities for people from different parts of our Americas to aspire to leadership and to be given the opportunity to leadership based on merit, not on ethnicity, not on wealth, but based on merit to do the job of leading the organization, then we might as well not be in it.
Toro Deputy is saying, good luck to you, Kijo. We know you can do a good job. And Jason Skeet say, I feel motivated. It has been some time since I heard a Caribbean brother open up the conversation that presents to us that we are more than the sum total of what others believe.
Yep.
Thank you. So, and saying that now, since you officially announced your candidacy, what sort of feedback or support you have been getting for your candidacy for the presidency?
You know, there are some who have come out openly and articulated the same position that I just did. There are some that are sitting on the fence. There are
As
some
expected.
that, and there's some that are saying, well, we were surprised that you were going to do this, and we weren't informed. And perhaps it should have been a Caribbean collective decision. Um, and to them, I say, look, we have never been able to get a Caribbean collective decision on anything um, um, that is sufficiently forward thinking. And somebody has to take the lead. Somebody has to play a leadership role. Somebody has to go there as the pioneer. And that is the way it has always been. Because if we wait, it will never happen. Sometimes when you go to when you in an association meeting and you're selecting a team, when it comes to what happens after you select a team, right? Everybody and it happens in cricket all the time, right? When they select a team, every country has a reason as to why their athlete didn't get selected. And so you change around the leadership of West Indies cricket, hoping that the next time around, that will somehow impact the number of people that you get. But that's not how life works, and that's not how organizations are supposed to work, right? So the thing is that while our Caribbean leaders are, vacillating as to whether we should or should not support Keith Joseph, that's not what it's about. The issue is, are we supporting the principle that we believe that we have the capacity to aspire to higher positions? You know, um, we somebody has to be out there first to do it, and we need to sit down and think to ourselves: are we interested in building a Caribbean that has the respect across the international community as we have gotten from Trinidad Ramphal and others over the years? Or are we going to sit down and behave like crabs in a barrel, fighting over who should be the one to have been first and nobody else would go, and what we can get out of it? What we can get out of it is a show of Caribbean unity and our broad-mindedness to look beyond ourselves. However much we are small and working together, but we can in fact be part of the international community, holding our own and showing that we are as capable as the people next door to provide leadership. And so give us a chance to do it. And I think that in fairness, it's not about whether I knew or didn't know before, or whether I told you or I didn't tell you. The issue is, am I capable of doing it? And if not me, who? If not now, when? And why not? So I think the issue is, can I galvanize the Caribbean support? Can I ensure that the entire Caribbean support me? I hope I can. But I say, don't judge me on the basis of whether I told you or not. Judge me on the basis of my capacity to do that for which I aspire.
But 7 years ago, historically, 7 years ago, there was a case of Caribbean unity when yourself and Peter Kane of St. Lucia and Pueblo of the Dominican Republic, you were all nominated by your respective NOCs. And then ultimately there was, as you said, an agreement among yourselves to support one candidate, right? Yep. So it's not a sense of lack of Caribbean unity. I think there is, because as you will recall, 7 years ago.
We took a long time to get to that point.
Oh, really?
And it was an act of maturity that allowed us to do it, right? But even in doing that, we arrived at that decision in large measure because we felt that as a Caribbean Spanish-speaking person, Puyo would have gotten some Spanish support, right? So it was a strategic decision in terms of saying we can therefore get the Spanish to be sufficiently objective that some will actually go in one direction as opposed to another. You know, the issue really is, do we believe that we can, in fact, influence decision making in these organizations, right? We are, PANAM Sports has 3 groupings, okay? There's a group 1 that is made up of USA, Canada, and a number of countries from Central America, and Haiti from the English-speaking Caribbean. Group 2 is essentially the Caribbean. Cuba, Dominican Republic, Cuba, Puerto Rico, and you come around all of the other English-speaking Caribbean, with the exception of Trinidad and Tobago, which is in Group 3, which is largely South America and some members of Central America, right? So they are in those kinds of groupings. Now, when you look at them closely, you'd recognize that the English-speaking Caribbean dominates Group 2. And so the 4 representatives of Group 2 have changed over the years. Peterkin was the first one, I think, elected in 1995 or somewhere there, who was the leader, the first person to be elected to the executive from Group 2. And then Vida Bruno Victor and our friend who just died from St. Kitts and Nevis, Alfonso Bridgewater, was the other person. And then we had somebody from, I think, Cuba on the group. So we had
Rivas.
Yeah, right. So then Peterkin was invited to become treasurer of PANAM Sports. This is an appointed position, and so he was then replaced. The election took place. I replaced Mike Fennell as vice president of Group 2. Vida and Alfonso stayed on. We had from that group in the last election, we had Erskine Simmons of Barbados. So the 4 actually all came from the Eastern Caribbean, strange enough. Okay, so that's where your 4 is. Each group has 4 people, and then you have the position of president that is given, and then the vice presidents of each of the group. There's a broad general vote to elect one person who will be first VP, then elect the second VP, and the third VP as the case may be. Yeah, but there are no specific designations for the vice presidents within the structure, such that all that the Constitution says is the first vice president is to act in the absence of the president, the second vice president in the absence of the president, and the first vice president, blah, blah, blah. That kind of situation.
Yeah, but we still have a situation where the names that you call, like the Vida, the Erskine Simmons, and others, are still seeking positions. I think even Alfred Emmanuel from St. Lucia.
Alfred Emmanuel is seeking to get on board, yes.
And we have Knights who is seeking to replace his colleague who died, Bridgewater. Yeah, Knights. And we also have Rivas from...
Sarah from Puerto Rico, and you have the president of the Cuban Olympic Committee as well.
Roberto.
So they have to come down to 4. One position is already taken, that is the vice presidency, which I am vacating. And Vida has already been
the
only person.
Yeah.
The only person. So she's more or less guaranteed the vice presidency of Group 2. The others will have to contest for the remaining 3 positions.
Okay. Rudian?
Certainly, that was a mouthful, and I'm just
Yes, I
sitting here
know.
wondering,
Yeah,
if you the next election you might want to run for prime minister of St. Vincent.
no,
I,
I think
I will do that when Michael runs for prime minister.
nah, after the politics.
but surely you put your words together to a point that we have seen ourselves as not being good enough, and that's not only in one area in the Caribbean as a whole. We never want to put ourselves to challenge ourselves. We always want it, but we never want to work for it. And suddenly you have suddenly put it in place that yeah, we are like barrels like crabs in a barrel, and surely if I don't have the opportunity, but if I did have the opportunity, I'll be voting for you for sure. I believe that you have the merit to do the job, and you have done the work to get to that position. You have nothing to do with education. You have to do with the work that you have put in over the years, and the knowledge that you acquire over the years, and everything that you have done to be in the position that you are now to say yes, I can be that. So certainly, 100% with you on that. So I will be praying for you, and certainly that God will do His bit. And if it's not your will, it's not your will. If it is the will, there's nothing they can do. The people in South America, they will be voting for you, not even realizing that what kind of vote they make. Because if it's God's will, it's God's will. So certainly. Um, it's good, but surely you have really put it in place that we in the Caribbean have to be able to stand up and take a stand and want better for ourselves, and stop trying to get that handout and try to work for certain things and work your way up the ladder. Like we've seen it, we always believe as Black people we couldn't be. We had a Black president, most powerful man in the world,
Yep.
and we may end up having a woman now. So yes, as Black people, yes, we can do it.
It's about
Certainly, yes, we can do it.
believing,
So
believing in
it's about
yourself,
believing. It's about
believing in
believing in
oneself.
yourself. It's
Yeah.
about believing in yourself, and we as a Caribbean nation, we have to believe in each other, and we have to believe in ourselves.
All right. Hazel is saying, looking forward to see the plans that will be put in place to continue developing the different areas in sports in the Caribbean region. And speaking about that, what are some of your strategic plans for, your vision for the development of PANAM Sports?
I have four pillars. Yeah. I have restoration, which is to restore trust and confidence in our organization. I think that as a region we can do much better, and better internal relations. The USA is part of our region, part of PANAM Sports. And it's amazing to me that you don't find US sports leaders seeking positions on international federations. How many international federations you can identify which has a US person as a president? Yeah. And you need to know why is that. Why is it that the US is not playing a more important leadership role in terms of facilitating this Americas that is held in terms of sport under the Pan American Sports umbrella? Yeah. The same with Canada. There's a sense in which the PANAM Sports has remained almost as if it is a Latin American enclave. And it ought not to be, because the membership is much broader than that. And so we have is it a confidence issue? I believe it is. And I think that we need to work more on that. My second pillar is unity. I say it because I am convinced that we are not united in the Americas. We are looking after our own interests. And very often it is interest of what I can get for me and my country and my athlete and my this and my that. right? And I'm saying we could do better than that if we as a collective seek to do things. You know how long we've been talking about trying to put a high performance training center in Grenada, and talk to different institutions about doing it. Why can't we do it? We saw that Grenada was a small island that produced people in field events. Why can't we have a high performance training center in Grenada for field events, for example? Right? We put that on the table a long time at PANAM Sports, right? It still hasn't happened, right? And there's much more that we can do with regard to something like that. Why can't we, look at Trinidad and Tobago that has a whole set of elite sports facilities. The cycling track, for example.
Yeah.
What can we do to bolster track cycling in the region by providing the opportunities for people to live and train in Trinidad and Tobago? And we can, the list can go on. We end up allowing many of the camps and the advanced training programs to be outside of the Caribbean. We have one wooden velodrome in the Caribbean, one, and that is in Trinidad and Tobago, right? We have nothing else. The only other velodrome that we have that is functional is a concrete one in Martinique. Okay, so I think we need to do unity, to do more for unity, and to let our collective voice be heard in terms of a collective approach to our development. I believe that there needs to be reformation, which is my third pillar. That we need to reform ourselves. We need modern governance. National Olympic committees in this area are very, very cagey about employing people with the necessary skills and expertise and qualification. We tend to keep them at bay, and we tend to leave the work of our Olympic committees only among the small group who constitute the executive. We seem afraid to say hand over technological development to people with the expertise, hand over public relations to people with the expertise. Let us invite people who have been trained in sports medicine, in sports psychology, etc., to help us be part of the thing and so broaden the space of things. We look, there's a big issue now of mental health and sport. Who's doing it? The executive? They have the expertise, or do we find a subcommittee comprising of individuals who have the capacity and who we are prepared to even remunerate to be able to facilitate it, right? And why can't we have institutions and more programs within the Caribbean, inviting expertise from across the Americas to be able to help us as a grouping all enhance our group? Instead, we have, like I said, Jamaica now questioning whether they should continue to accept athletes as students coming from different Caribbean islands. And finally, growth, because I think that we could grow the sport, we could grow participation, and we could make sure that more Caribbean people understand that sport these days is a career path. It is not just fun and running around the place. It is a career path that people make a living from, and that's why we have to be able to treat athletes differently, because it's their careers that they're talking about. It is their future. It is their whole life. So those are the four pillars on which my program is built.
Okay. Some comments. Roger Duncan says some questions here are most fitting for the next government town hall meeting. I assume he's talking about the high performance center and all these sort of things. Roger, don't go and joke up.
That's my boy, Roger.
Don't go and joke up the politics, boy. And
Roger could ask about the swimming pool that's supposed to be built for some time now, right?
Yeah. And Julian Lee says, good afternoon, everyone. Mr. Joseph, my question to you is that if given the support and the and successful in your candidacy, how are you hoping to, handle that with all the other, positions you are? I mean, you'll probably multitask, without any conflict of interest.
I like when you ask questions like that, because when people have entrepreneurs establish large organizations, nobody asks them those sort of questions. And sometimes it is assumed that because of your color and your absence of wealth, that automatically that becomes a problem. What do we do when we have large organizations? It's horses for courses. You engage people to do the activities that are required, who have the capacity. And so you establish those other things. There's no need for me to hold on to the leadership of some other organizations if I have this position, because the position allows me to relinquish some of those to other people who have the capacity and who are willing to go along the same developmental pathway, so that as the Americas, we all grow together. I think it would open up opportunities for other leaders within the Caribbean to aspire to the leadership of CANOC, to the leadership of to playing particular roles, so that the issue of a conflict of interest never comes up, because you engage so many people in terms of facilitating transparency and accountability, which are the most critical issues impacting governance in sport across the world, to facilitate so that you're an open house, but that people must know that those who are aspiring for positions are in fact capable of doing it, are willing to engage others, so that you broaden the pool from which you draw, and that they're willing to honor their commitments to the development of our Caribbean people as a unified grouping. As a unified grouping. Even at CANOC now, we are talking about the establishment of a Caribbean Africa sport alliance, because we recognize that finally governments on both sides of the Atlantic have begun to see the value of working closer with Africa. And the African Bank that's going to be established in Antigua and Barbuda speaks to that level of collaboration. Why aren't we doing the same in sport? You know, and I'm saying that the world of opportunities, what I find lacking is that we get sometimes sports administrators who are not willing to study sport, and they're not willing to have around them people who study sport. This is an enterprise that is continues to be one of the fastest growing and most exciting in the international community. Yet we are twiddling our thumbs in terms of engagement of people with the necessary skills in sport. You know, we hesitant. We want to do something. We call a lawyer. We're not thinking about establishing a juridical committee. We want to talk about the adjudication of disputes in sport. You know, we're not setting up structures, and we're trying to do that in Canada. We're saying, why can't we in the Caribbean have a chapter of the Court of Arbitration for Sport? Why we have to go to Europe? Why can't we have a Caribbean sport arbitration mechanism in place? We have people with the capability. We have lawyers. We have lawyers who know sport and who are willing to get involved in sports law, right? The same way we talk about sports medicine. We have to recognize that we are not begging for a place at the table. We are at the table. And we are at the table because we believe that we have a right to be there. And there are times when you have to clear the table, clear it. There are times when you have to get a new table, do it.
You know, thank you for sticking with us. We have another 10 minutes, you know, on the extended, because I know it's very important, and some of the comments and things coming in. But you do agree, Mr. Joseph, that, and I don't think it's wrong, but you do agree that that's very ambitious, of you.
Well, why we went to school? Why did our parents engage us in education? You know, we have a right to aspire. If we didn't have people who had aspirations, we would not have had any slavery votes. It burns my heart that the first black nation that fought for its independence, Haiti, is treated as a pariah. And that should concern all of us. whose parents were slaves and came to the Caribbean in one form or another. But we can do better than that. And so it remains a burden on some of us who have taken the time to educate ourselves that every time something happens as a tragedy in Haiti, it becomes world news. We don't seem to get anything good coming out of Haiti. And I don't believe that that is the reality. I think they have the capacity to do good, but we don't hear about it. And all of the assistance packages that were sent to Haiti after the earthquake, there are other things that were not told. We were not told, we were given the impression that suddenly Haiti developed cholera. We weren't told what was the relationship between that cholera outbreak and some of the soles that were bought from the Asian continent. I'm making the point that we have to be able to manage our aspirations, but also to let the world know of what we are capable. So the rest of this week, people will be talking about Sridhar Ramphal and his achievements, right? But we also have to be concerned that we have Nobel laureates who chose not to live in the Caribbean. Why? Because they were not sufficiently appreciated in their own land of birth.
Mm-hmm.
They were not sufficiently appreciated in the region of their birth. And so they went and gave their scholarship to other agencies in other parts of the Caribbean. How are our children supposed to feel about that? You know, and what are we leaving as legacies for our children in terms of their own aspirations? To reside on handouts, to walk forever on bended knees. You know, I think that what we haven't done well is to have our athletes tell us what it is that motivates them. Look at Kirani. Kirani is one of the most, you know, um, charismatic guys from our area as an athlete. And he talks to athletes with a level of humility that if you didn't know, you wouldn't think that he was an Olympic champion or a world champion, right? He is the kind of role model that you want people to understand. How is he now able to continue running with his own reality? And why is he doing it? It's certainly not for the money. And each time he does it as a proud Grenadian and as a proud Caribbean person. We have people like that in every field of endeavor. We just have to give them the opportunity to tell their stories. And I believe once we afford them that opportunity, we will see future generations of our youths turning towards sport and some of these other activities rather than towards a life of crime.
Mm-hmm. We're talking about Kirani James. Come tomorrow, God's willing, Kirani will be 32. It's his birthday. And it's a Kirani James Day. It's Kirani James Day.
Great. So give him my best regards.
Not officially recognized as a public holiday, but it is a national day.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Most is the thing. Right. Paul Phillip is saying, well-spoken KJ, one of my mentors. That's our Paul Phillip, coach
Paul,
of...
Paul is my good buddy. Yeah. And
that's Coach Paul Phillip.
Yeah. A tremendous coach who has built himself up and who I believe is an exemplar for many in terms of becoming a student of sport. He reads profusely. He engages in education programs on his subject and on his field of sport and beyond. And I think is someone that we don't give enough credit for what he has been able to do in sport. And I continue to hope that he will be a good example continuing forward and build more athletes to the highest level.
And I certainly would be excited about your comments you made in terms of the, like sort of like an academy or high performance center, training center somewhere like in Grenada, especially for the throws, because as we know, that's Paul's forte, you know.
Paul and I have been talking about that for the longest while, actually. And it's one of the reasons why we started drafting proposals for a high performance center, particularly in respect of field events in Grenada. And I hope that he will be around long enough to see it realized.
Yeah, certainly. Hazel says building leadership capacity is so important, and I think that is part of your ambition in terms of building and sort of showing an example to others, even our sports administrators in the region, because you know some may say you are a bit over ambitious, but at the same time you explain that hey, there's nothing wrong in being ambitious because we have the capacity, you know, that we can be leaders as well. I mean, look at football, for example. When you look at, let's say, CONCACAF, and you made the point about, you know, the English-speaking Caribbean, more than 50% of the membership of CONCACAF, English-speaking Caribbean nations. Mm-hmm. Yet for all, there's not, well, except for Jack Warner, we have not had someone from the English-speaking Caribbean. But even when Jack Warner was around, they have those who are pulling and fighting and tugging, you know, and things like that. So I'm saying that to say that, you know, I am hoping that there's some sort of clarity among our sports administrators, and not just track and field or football or whatever, sports administrators in general, that they do have the capacity. And if they work together, and I'm certain they can move mountains and they can go far. Keith?
Yeah. I think it would be a good thing if over a period of time you bring as many of them as possible on this forum, so that they have an opportunity to explain their positions and to be confronted with questions as to, if not, why not? You know, yeah. I think we need to have that kind of openness across the region.
The fact of the matter is, apart from yourself and Brian and probably Mike Sands, there are just a few. The others are sort of, you know, they stay to the back, you know, and things like that. As I always say, yourself, Brian, Mike, and a few others, they're always willing to come and speak and, you know, about, you know, sports and sports in the region. Roger says, sport, time we start looking at it as an economy, not a sector. The subset factor is given a very myopic view of possibilities beyond our imagination, certainly. And Toro must give his little piece that will wrap up it. Add handle to Uncle Jack Warner name Bass. It's the great Jack Warner, the Caribbean's most outstanding international sports administrator. Yes, Toro. Yes, Toro.
I expect that from Lincoln.
He loved that. Once you mentioned that, Uncle Jack Warner.
No, but I want to say very quickly that the point that Roger just made is excellent, and I think that we underestimate the value of sport, and yes, it is, and you know, governments are partly responsible for the myopic vision, in the sense that we've always found it necessary to attach sport to something else. So is this and sport, education, youth and sport, you know, community development and sport is never given its own portfolio, and the opportunity to become what it can be, a great contributor to the national economy.
Well said. That's a nice parting shot, and certainly one that I will ensure our permanent secretaries and our ministers get regarding sports. Always a pleasure having you, Mr. Joseph, and certainly I'm hoping that, and Rudy, and I'm certain you will agree that probably before October, before that dreaded week in October, we certainly will probably have Mr. Joseph again to speak to us. And as he said, you know, probably we'll try to get some other sports administrators to come on and talk to us, you know, and hear what they have to say. Yes, appreciate Mr. Joseph.
Thank you very
Certainly,
much.
thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's always a pleasure having you on, and thank you for that. there's no words that can really
yes,
put
I know.
to put
He
together
never,
what country today,
never disappoint us when
Never,
it
yeah.
comes on. Yeah.
Yeah. And on other note, I will give you a call. I really do want to talk to you about something that's
Yeah.
very, very important. I'll reach out to you. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks
All right,
very
guys.
much, Mr.
Be
Joseph.
good.
Thank you very much. All
Okay
right.
then. Yeah. So, folks, that's Mr. Keith Joseph, the president of CANOC. And interestingly, I mean, for those of you who came on late, there's an opportunity that you could go and listen again. I thought he was well articulated, and some may not agree, but certainly, he gave his, certainly he gave his points, and I think he, he basically, knock it in the head. Thank you, Mr. Joseph. Yes, from Hazel. I'm certain that it was,
Yeah.
and we have had Mr. Joseph on the program before.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah.
And he said it as it is. Mr. Brian Lewis, again from Trinidad and Tobago. We had Mr.
Yep.
Mike Stans, the president
Yep.
of NACAC. These are the sports administrators who have, frequent the program and have provided insight.
Who have agreed openly to come on,
but they provided good insights. But once we have
information,
once we have them, very good
Yeah.
insights and information from these
Yeah.
gentlemen and things like that. So hopefully, we get more of our sports administrators to come on and to speak and to, share their vision, their insights into sports, not just as in terms of the leadership position, but just in general, And I want to thank Mr. Joseph and thank those who provided some feedback as well. Thank you very much, Rudy.
It's always a pleasure. Certainly.
Yes, and as I said, it's Kirani James Day on Sunday.
Yeah.
It's his 32nd birthday, and probably we'll take the opportunity here to wish Kirani
truly
a happy birthday. A very happy birthday. Yeah. All right, then. Thank you very much.
All right, no problem.
You're welcome. Okay, so that's Rudy and Sylvan live from Toronto. And then we had Mr. Keith Joseph, who joined us from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Roger says we need the Swimming Association of the program, certainly, because we heard that, the funds have been allocated. FINA, yes, it's FINA, no? Is it FINA? Yeah, FINA. Allocated funds for the building of a swimming pool for Grenada. And we probably will have the folks from the Swimming Association. I think they have elections coming up, so I don't know if now is the time to, sometimes when folks are around election, if they are seeking re-election, they probably will come on. If they are not, they won't, and depending on the circumstances. But certainly something we'll look at. One association I've always tried to, over the past, 2 years or so, is the Football Association. But you know what happened? Is that I recall an invitation sent to the Grenada Football Association. It was directed to an executive member. And the executive member said they'll get back to me. And they said after considering and reflecting and consultation, blah, 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 they declined. It was a declination. Declined to come on the program. Said, no problem. But here the interesting thing about it. Just a few days after, they did an interview with someone. So I know it's not in a position. I sort of sense the sort of mindset at the time, because obviously I make no bones about it. We grew up together. We went to school together. We live in the same community. That's myself and Chenny Joseph, the former president. And we still remain good friends, But as Chenny will tell you, we do disagree on things, Sometimes we will talk for hours, and probably 60-70% of the discussion will be in disagreement, But we remain friends. But that's how it is, And they sort of linked that, and I thought it was a bit petty, on the part of you holding national office as a national association, and you're mixing it with personalities and this pettiness and things like that. So I said, yeah, no problem. I have no problem with that. I always extend an invitation to members of sports administrators. I have no qualms with them. We come on the program, we have a discussion. And I always say it's not so much an interview, it's a discussion. We discuss things, right? I don't get into this personal pettiness and things like that. Sometimes, I get so many questions sometimes from people when they hear certain people on the program, and I know where they're coming from. And I say, hey, no, I'm not getting into these sort of things, all right? I am having a discussion, and my thing is about development, etc. You have your personal thing, take it somewhere else, okay? Yeah, but that's how it is. Roger, good luck, man. Let me see if I can broker that interview. Good luck. As I said, listen, and you have seen the trend we have had over the past, year, 2 years, and things like that. So we don't get into this personal back and forth and bacchanal sort of things like that. All we do is having a discussion, and we discuss things on a development issue. So if you represent an association, we discuss how you intend to elevate the sport that you oversee to the next level. What's about your grassroots programs? All these sort of things. That is what we ain't going into this personal thing and, bacchanal and hearsay and rumors and, and things like that. So, no. And that you have seen that has been the trend in our program over the past few years. Okay. Thank you very much, folks. As I indicated, it's the Labor Day weekend here in New York, and, lots of, I know, Caribbean folks, not just Grenadians, Caribbean folks are around. There are a lot of activities taking place this weekend. For those of you who participate in, please try to be on the safe side. Do everything in some level of moderation. We want to not hear about you. We want to hear from you. So I look forward to seeing you on our program come next weekend. God's willing, hopefully we'll have a program. By the way, just as a reminder, remember our para-athletes, they continue to participate in the Paralympics. Then we have the World Under-20s going on in Lima, Peru. And then we have the Diamond League continuing. We have on the 5th of September, we have Anderson Peters. Yes, Anderson, that's Thursday. On Thursday, Anderson Peters will be in competition in Zurich. And then come the following Friday, we have both Anderson and Kirani James in competition in the finals of the Diamond League. Anderson will be competing in the javelin and Kirani the 400 meters. Kirani has already qualified, and Anderson has one more competition left, and he will be in that. And they will be looking for the diamond, to win the diamond. So they win that final event in Brussels, they win the diamond. Okay? Thank you very much, folks. Once again, always a pleasure having you, and look forward to your company next weekend, God's willing. Until then, do have yourself a pleasant weekend.